collaboration, and etc. As we navigate the complexity ahead, let's remain as steadfast in our resolve to create a resilient, efficient, and sustainable global maritime community. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Captain Alok Sharma, part of the Nautical Institute Hong Kong branch, and part of my day job, I'm head of training for the Anglo-Eastern Ship Management Company. Thank you so much for being here, and Miss Amy Chan, JP, thank you so much, ma'am, for being here, second year running, and also taking the keynote address today. And setting a clear pathway for us, essentially, that we continue to learn, irrespective of our positions, we realize that we have to continue to learn. And thanks for sharing all the initiatives that Hong Kong government is doing towards a sustainable future. Thank you so much, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, global risk, I think over the 5 days, and it goes much beyond even earlier. So it does present a wide array of challenges as well as opportunities that are shaping the maritime industry today. In current times, it's not only the design and the direction, but also the purpose behind what we are doing becomes paramount. And one thing that on behalf of ICS and Nautical Institute Hong Kong branch would like to say that collaboration is a key word these days, which has never been more important. That the maritime industry as such is now employing various platforms to address and debate with the pressing issues to the industry. Forums are transitioning into platforms not just for discussing problems, rather than for finding solutions. And I think a more critical element is how to get deeper insights into the various stakeholders that are essentially there in the maritime industry. This joint initiative by ICS Hong Kong and NI Hong Kong exemplify this trend, where we organize events aimed at bringing together diverse stakeholders to deliberate on crucial industry topics. The overwhelming interest in these events, as Jagmeet and myself we were discussing, that next year we have to go for a bigger place. So all the ladies and gentlemen who are standing, both from Jagmeet and my side, apologies, but we definitely clearly see the industry wants both NI and ICS to work together and to go to a bigger venue, which we'll certainly share. I also extend an invitation essentially to all as we seek a common ground for collaboration and to devise solution for the men and women who are working on board ships, who still remain at the forefront and at the sharp end of the ecosystem. So that is critical that we keep that thought with us while we go through this evening, and not only just for the discussions today, but essentially going beyond this room also. And if you'll allow me, we have Sean and Jan. Are you still in the room? All right. So we have two cadets from Hong Kong who are part of this event today, and indeed, as true apprentice officers, they are busy with work. So there's Sean and there's Jan, and if you could please have a round of applause. So thank you, Sean and Jan, for being here, for helping us out, and actually turning up in uniform just to keep us on point and on focus. That while we have left the sea, but essentially where our focus needs to be. So Sean and Jan, thank you so much for being here. Please take your seat. Thank you so much. And now I would like to hand over to Mr. Jagmeet, who doesn't need much introduction, but I've been tasked to yet again introduce him. Jagmeet Makkar, FICS, is the immediate past chairman of the Hong Kong branch of the Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers. He's an independent arbitrator, consultant, and educator through his firms Skill Plus in Singapore and Hong Kong. And you know him very well. So Jagmeet, all yours. And thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks everyone for coming. I mean, this is absolutely fantastic to see all friends, old and new, here to join us for this event. So without taking too much time, now we have to follow our schedule. Can I take the liberty of us telling you how the entire layout of the program would be. We will start with the presentation for about 15 to 20 minutes maximum. I think Paras, if we can have, people call him Parash. I don't know why, because when I read his name, the name which came in my mind was Paras. Paras is a stone. When you touch the iron with that, that iron becomes gold. So let's see through his presentation what he does for us. Okay. So Paras, all yours for 15, 20 minutes. And after that, we will have a panel discussion and I'll come back again for that. You can. My laptop. All right. So by the time the tech part is sorted out, so I will bring forward what I had to speak as the moderator's comments so that we don't waste time. The future of shipping faces numerous global risks that threaten stability and operational capacity. Key challenges include climate change, which affects the trade routes that we all are very well aware, the seasonality and everything that we have seen, and geopolitical tensions that can disrupt commerce through sanctions and new trade barriers. The industry is under increasing pressure to reduce its carbon footprint, with the IMO setting ambitious decarbonization targets. The shift towards greener practices requires significant investments in new technologies, altering the industry's landscape. Additionally, the evolving regulatory environment demands compliance with stricter sustainability regulations. And mind you, it's not going to reduce, it's only going to increase. And that increases the importance of robust cybersecurity measures to protect digitalized operations from rising cyber threats. Geoeconomic dynamics further complicate matters as countries implement protective policies affecting global trade flows. In navigating these challenges, shipping stakeholders must prioritize vigilance and adaptability while seeking collaborative solutions to mitigate risks and ensure industry's vital role in international commerce. So I hope I don't have to change to the other paper to speak some more. Are we ready? Okay. So what we have done for this particular event is we looked at different panelists and their expertise and brought it together. It's like a bouquet. Yeah. When we talk about global risk, it goes all across, if not 380 degrees, 180 degrees. Yeah. So we have Neil, who is an expert in, sanctions. He's a consultant. So how this regime of sanction and different jurisdictions, how that is going to affect our business. So he's going to tell us about that. Sanjay, many of us know him. He is from Singapore, again, an expert in decarbonization, and he's going to tell us about the investments. One thing that he mentioned, I was talking to him, was quite interesting. He says a lot of money is needed for the infrastructure ashore, for these alternate fuels and other efforts which are being made for the decarbonization or the transition to the green shipping or green world. The issue is that there is no demand for the output of all these initiatives. So till the time that demand happens, the ROI, return on investment for those investors, it's pretty difficult to look at. How is that going to happen? Who's going to put money? Where are the people who take the step forward, the initial ones who take that risk? So that's an issue. Then I thought about, what about someone from a ship owning and operating company? The only one wonderful name came in my mind was Pacific Basin and Harsh Bhave. So he's going to tell us how they are managing in terms of the risks of today and preparing for the risks of tomorrow. I think that's something which is fantastic. Then the issue was someone who is, I don't want to use that word, but I'll use it, a hardcore commercial man. So nobody could be better than Pankaj. I'm very happy he's here. So Pankaj is going to tell us various challenges which are being faced by the industry and how the entire landscape is going to change. Human capital, people, and that's so very important. Yeah, as Alok also talked about the human capital. So that is where Ashish comes in from Maersk Hong Kong. So he looks after the crewing and has got such passion for it. The way he mentioned about how are we going to convince the world that shipping is a good industry and a career option. So we are going to hear more from him. And last but not the least, our dear Christine Lowe. She has been with us. This is the third time she has been on our panel, and we love that. And she's from HKUST, Chief Strategy person in charge. And also she has been the Undersecretary of Environment in the past. And we are so delighted to have this nice bouquet. So I'm sure that we'll have a fantastic panel discussion. So all set. You don't have to listen to me more about it.
Thank you, Jagmeet, and good evening, everyone. And thank you to ICSN Nautical Institute for this opportunity. I've timed myself for about 17 minutes and probably a little buzz. I work for HSBC in the equities department. So what we essentially do is to have an opportunity to have a helicopter view to this sector and probably come out with an investment recommendation on the listed securities. So it's a bit different from all of you do, but I've learned a lot from this community. Hong Kong is home for us. I moved here 17 years back, and Hong Kong and the shipping community in Hong Kong makes me feel home. So I put together a few slides, and probably I'll try to cover as much as I can in the time stipulated. The topic was risk, and this is a cliche word that I've been using since the start of COVID, that shipping is the one industry that thrives amidst chaos, whether that chaos is geopolitical, whether that chaos is climate related. And let's see how far have we come. Come 2021, 2022, when we are talking about that, okay, now once in a lifetime Black Swan event is behind us. Sure. Shall I continue? Oh, okay, sure. All right. So, by the way, this slide essentially talks about what all we have gone through after COVID. We have seen disruptions in the energy and grain trade. It started with Russia-Ukraine war. By the time when it happens, everybody said that it's a David and Goliath, and probably it will be over in a couple of weeks' time. And fast forward, here we are. Then we saw a drought situation becoming chronic in Panama Canal, which is now seems to be coming back. We have seen an evolving Red Sea crisis at the end of last year, and at the start of this year, a lot of the industry people that we spoke with were saying that probably this will last at least till the end of first quarter. That became at the end of first half. That became 2024. And this time around, the discussion is that probably is going to last for the remainder of 2025 as well. And as we enter into 2025, now we have different views on what does President Trump's second term would mean for trade. Over the next few slides, which I'll skip quickly, which talks about some of the underlying events on those 4 key issues that we touched upon. Probably this one I'll probably focus on the importance of the Red Sea, and pretty much everything that has to divert has been diverted, which means that come 2025, incrementally, Red Sea is unlikely to add to the demand and supply imbalance, whether it's a container, whether it's some other cargo means. And that brings me to talk about some of the subsectors. And as the title suggests, same, but different. They run through the different cycle. This is the one slide. It's one of my favorite slide, and it has worked through every inflection point. I'll probably spend about a minute to explain you. So the chart on the left-hand side talks about the peak of shipping boom back in 2007. The red bar is the order book at given point of time as a percentage of existing fleet. My favorite slide, and it has worked. And the gray bar talks about at that point of time, what kind of average demand market was expecting, what kind of scrapping market was expecting. Essentially, it's the demand and scrapping which put together gives a conviction on how much ships we need to order. And just before Lehman crisis, you see almost each of these sectors had an order book which was worth almost next 5 to 10 years of demand and scrapping. And we saw the crisis. The demand expectation has reset to a lower level, and it pretty much took over a decade for that capacity to be digested. With 2016 being a low point, come 2019, there were a lot of talks around IMO 2020, and the demand and supply dynamics was almost coming to at a 3-decade low level, and we had COVID. Fast forward, rest is history. It started with container, it went on to crude, it went into dry bulk, then to product, then to crude. Shipping industry made money, and as they say, this time is different. Sadly not. Shipping industry made money. They ordered vessels, and everybody ordered for the absolute right reason. They needed to prepare themselves for decarbonization. They needed to replace their old fleet. They need to prepare for the next 25 years. But when we see it from the outsiders, and as an investor, if you're a ship owner, and there is a reason, in fact, sorry to digress, but often we have been asked that why there are not too many large liquid shipping names listed in the market. And primary reason is duration mismatch. You as a ship owner, when you make an investment decision, you look through over the cycle, 25 years, life of the vessels. But from the investor's perspective, 25 weeks is a too long period. And therefore, it's like the sun and moon are making rounds. And every couple of years, you will see the interest is aligned. And COVID was one of those time frame. Fast forward, if you see today, container pretty much points to us that we are pretty much back to the level where overcapacity will likely to persist for the remainder of the decade. Dry bulk is faring better, especially comparing it to what we have seen it in the past. Product tanker made money, and we have seen ordering flow into the product, which means that probably over the next few years, even the product tanker will face the challenges, and subsequently the crude tanker. In this context, if you see where do we stand today in terms of the shipyard's capacity, yes, a lot of the grade A shipyard capacity has come off from the peak of 2007 and 8. But if you see today, not only that the yard capacity has come down, but the yards, or at least the grade A yards capacity, has already been taken for this year, next year, and the following year as well. And that is fueling the inflated asset prices, which is pretty much the case here. There is an inflation, whether it's a labor, whether it's a commodity, whether it's an environmental related cost. There is a tightening yard capacity. And last but not the least, there is a too much capital, which is chasing too few slots. Put all this together, this is the asset prices. And for once, you are seeing that despite the volatility in the freight rates, whether it's in tanker or in bulk or even in the container charter, the new build asset prices are not buzzing. And that pretty much is a reflection of these three factors coming together. I'll probably now touch upon each of the subsector briefly and my presentation talking on the supply chain. With respect to the container, as I said, right, shipping thrives amidst chaos. And this chart essentially summarizes the point. If you look at the third quarter of 2024 and compare it with the pre-COVID same time frame. Absolute volume has grown by 10%, whereas the nominal capacity addition during that time frame is 32%. So despite capacities rising 3x faster than the demand, the industry is making a supernormal return today. And that leads us to the reason that 32% of the capacity has been unable to take care of the 10% of demand growth because of the port congestion, trade imbalance, slow steaming, blank sailing, longer voyages. And that's the phenomena that has been seen across different subsectors as well. I'll probably illustrate that in the next few slides. When I talk about the trade imbalance, when we talk about global trade has grown at 10% over the last 5 years. However, the growth into the Asia, India, Middle East, particularly let's say Asia, North America, the trade route where most of us are familiar with, has grown 27%. Conversely, the import into Asia from North America is down about 18%. So if you put them together, you would say, okay, so the overall demand growth is somewhere around, I don't know, 4.5%, 5%. But as a shipping company, you need to add 27% capacity to manage this trade lane, because you have to deploy the capacity to handle the peak head haul volume. And that's where the imbalance has created demand for the additional ship capacity, even with the underlying trade demand slowing off. Now, why we are saying that the industry is waiting for the deep and rather longer down cycle this time around? In our industry, there's a perception that would you worry more about the shipping company with a lot of debt or a shipping company with a lot of cash? Because a lot of cash allows them to weather through the downturn and to basically go much deeper before they eventually surrender. We have seen in the last decade, because many of them were levered, the industry was a bit fragmented. We have seen a consolidation. We have seen some of the bankruptcies. But come today, now with the top 6, 7 container shipping lines, all are flushed with cash, has a strong pedigree, either part of a large conglomerate or backed by the government. Doesn't look like anybody's going anywhere. And which means that have money, will spend mentality means that this down cycle might be painful, but barring if there are chaos around the world. I'll probably skip these are the slides which talks about this. Similarly, now if we bring 2 minutes on the dry bulk, it has always been about Chinese demand when it comes to the dry bulk. What we have seen thus far is a chart, pretty much a reflection of what we saw back in the container. If you look at the last 5 years, the absolute demand has grown by 6%, but it needed about 18% of the capacity. And that is again a function of 6%. 6% is the demand growth. 9.6% is because of the longer voyage and trade shift. And another 2% is because of the port congestion and slow steaming. Now, where we stand today, we have been hearing about the aging of fleet. Scrapping is around the corner. The order book is of 10% in the grand scheme of things is very, very low. It pretty much prepares a recipe for a stronger, for longer kind of scenario. But in a shorter term, which is where most of our focus is, because our investors care about what's going to happen next quarter, at best next year. So to that extent, what we saw so far is that the last 18 months, a lot of things worked in favor of the sector. I mean, despite a lot of pessimism around China continued to import iron ore, continued to import coal, and that has basically surprised many. In fact, the China's steel export became one of the biggest user of Chinese import with respect to the iron ore. Where we stand today, probably on the next 18 months with Panama Canal less of an issue, Red Sea unlikely to absorb more capacity, with 3 to 4% of annual capacity growth, unless China continue to fire as it did in the past, it'll be very, very difficult for the dry bulk sector to find a balance with respect to demand and supply. And then always the question comes that, okay, but look at the fleet. They are getting aged. There's almost possibility that at $10,000, $12,000 level, we will see scrapping. And that brings to the point. 2021, 2022. However inefficient your ship was, you made lots of money. And if you had a 15-year, 17-year, 20-year-old vessels, with those 2 years of cash flow, you would have paid whatever little debt available on that ship. You would have depreciated the vessels fully for 20 years already. And remember, this industry is not owned by the large listed corporates. It's a long tail of small ship owners. And for them is the cash cost, which is the determinant of whether I send the vessel to the scrapyard or no. And the cash cost is like 5,000, 6,000, even if you stretch it. And at today's rates, we are miles away from this. So irrespective of a smaller order book, the things need to get much worse before it gets better, is the message. Not necessarily a very optimistic one in the near term, but as they say, in the longer term, probably the setting is positive. I'll probably skip these few slides. The tanker one, right? We had a great last few years. And like what we saw with respect to container, we have seen the product tankers made a lot of money. They started to order a lot of fleets. And now with the LR2 fungibility of moving across the crude and product, it's not only actually putting pressure on the product, but also on the crude side, despite almost negligible order of VLCC going into 2025 and to an extent in 2026. I'll probably skip explaining this chart because it's pretty much similar to what we have seen with respect to dry bulk. Same story is repeating here. And in the 2 minutes that I have, I still wanted to go across and talk about what does probably President Trump's elections mean to us, and generally on the, sorry, I have to see the slide. Oh, sorry. Can it go back? Or this one, yeah. No, sorry. Yeah. So this chart is very, very powerful. I came to Hong Kong in 2007. I became an analyst then. And we started to hear about rising Chinese labor costs, low-end manufacturing moving away from China. They are probably uncompetitive in terms of labor costs. It was in 2007 when China's market share as a percentage of global export was hovering around 7.5%. Fast forward 2016, President Trump comes into the power. China's market share is 13.7%. And yes, since then we have seen the China's export growth plateau a bit during those 4 years, and then the COVID came. And it actually shown to the world all over again that there is no alternative to China when it comes to the manufacturing. They snapped back the entire market share loss. And of course, from that peak level, as the rest of the economy is open, we are hovering at around 14.7%. By any stretch of imagination, this does not convey the message that we have been hearing for the last 10 years. That is the end of China's manufacturing cycle. Now, if you look deep into it, I mean, our economists put out a report talking about what does the US tariff may mean for China. It's a hypothetical situation, essentially, because majority of the goods that US import, probably they won't be able to bring those manufacturing back. So all what we will see is a change in trade pattern, probably acceleration in the change in pattern, maybe more near sourcing, maybe things are moving to Vietnam or maybe moving to India. And this chart pretty much explains the trade pattern shift. If you look at the left-hand side chart, China's weight into the US import was 21%. It came down to 13%. And as US move to take more and more goods from Mexico and Vietnam. But if you look at China's export to Vietnam and Mexico during that time frame, that has accelerated to bridge the gap of whatever China has lost from the US. So in a global export scheme of things, China is far away from losing its competitive edge. And this is the chart. If you see here, Vietnam, Mexico are the clear beneficiary of that supply chain shift, with India is tagging along, but probably is not able to reflect the full potential to that extent. And with this point on the time that I have, I will take a pause and I'll pass it on to Jagmeet. Thank you so much. And the presentation will be available if anybody wants a copy with Jagmeet. Thank you.
All right. Many of you must be wondering that there is so much stuff there and whether we'll get to see it or not. So I've just taken his permission that he will be able to share his presentation with anyone who is interested. All right. So in terms of the panel discussion, first, can I have my chairs back? And this one, if we can stop and change this thing. In the meantime, let me quickly, one by one, invite and request my panelists to sit in the same sequence as your photographs are there. All right. So let me call Mr. Harsh Bhave, Director of Fleet. So you have to see where you're going to sit. Yep. Okay. So Harsh is the Director of Fleet from Pacific Basin Limited. Captain Neil Watts. Neil is Sanctions Compliance Consultant, Cullman International LLC. Thank you. He's traveled from very far. Then Captain Ashish Medirata. He's based in Singapore, but he's looking after the Maersk Hong Kong. Miss Christine Lowe, Chief Development Strategist HKUST, and she's also on the board of Global Maritime Forum. Mr. Pankaj Khanna, Chief Executive Officer of Heidmar Inc. Sanjay, Dr. Sanjay Sikutan, Chief Strategy Officer, Global Center for Maritime Decarbonization, and Paras Chen, whom you just listened to, Managing Director, Global Head of Transport and Logistics Research of HSBC. How we are going to do is that first I'm going to give 3 to 4 minutes to each of the panelists without me disturbing them and requesting you not to disturb them, just listen what they have to say. And once those 3 to 4 minutes, after that we will start with Q&A. So I'll have my own few questions and I'll try and finish them. I might cut down on my questions quite a lot because I would like you to ask the questions. Okay, so let's start with the decarbonization expert, with Sanjay to begin with, followed by Christine.
Thank you very much, Jagmeet. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting GCMD here to share our views. As the advocate for decarbonization, I think the challenge for us is not answering the question, should we go green? The challenge for us is how fast should we go green? And that has been clouded by this concern about sustainable shipping in relation to, will it make business sense? I would like to suggest that there are two things that we need to think about when we think about sustainable shipping. One is the impact of climate change on shipping itself. One is the safety of our crew when they're out there at sea in very turbulent waters and very dangerous environmental conditions, especially like typhoons and sorts. The other thing is on the reliability of our assets that are floating. They're going to be subject to even harsher conditions. So the design requirements, if they don't keep up to manage these harsh conditions, is going to also jeopardize the sustainability of shipping. And the third thing is really the disruption of supply chains. And I think the earlier presentation shows that, especially if drought prevents the canals to be able to be conduits for shipping to move through. That's the impact of not actually thinking about sustainable shipping from the broader sense. The other thing to think about is the attraction of talent. We are going to have to attract the best and retain the best to manage multi-million-dollar assets and multi-million-dollar cargo in a very dangerous environment that they need to operate in. So if we don't do the right thing, we're going to have a challenge to have a sustainable shipping industry without those right talents and the best to manage an environment which is uncertain. They need to think on their feet. They need to have courage. These skills are only but a few of us that can manage it. So I like to kind of make sure we think about the decarbonization effort of shipping, which is the size of Germany, by the way. It is not 2.3, 2 to 3% is not small. And if we can actually get to zero carbon by 2050, it is really going to have a significant impact on our fight against climate change. So I'd just like to leave it there. Thank you.
Kristen.
Perhaps I can add to that. Yesterday at university at HKUST, we do a lot of climate change research. And yesterday we had a big meeting with the insurance sector and the insurance authority in Hong Kong. Now, obviously, insurance matters, and basically we were talking about what happens on land. So if we now switch to what happened with severe weather at sea, I think this is a topic that I certainly think the research and scientific organization would benefit a lot by talking to your industry. So if we just imagine what Sanjay said, right? You have a number of people on ships, and if you take all the ships around the world, there's actually quite a lot of people on ships all the time. And we want to think about ocean-going ships, but also smaller ships. So we have never had this happen before. We mentioned about the 4 typhoons in November, of which the current one, thank God, is not going to come here, but it's a super typhoon. This has never happened before. So I think as much as asset owners, financial investors are thinking today about insurance of things on land, we probably should try to see what we can do at sea. The situation is quite complex because on land, you want to know what happens to, let's say, a group of buildings in a specific area. Right now, that's quite hard because the grid upon which projections are made are very coarse. Now, obviously, if we're now going to take that at sea and you're thinking about maybe your journey, your many journey at any one time, is there some way that we can get the scientific community to think about what happens en routes? Because I'll just stop here by saying that the technology, the science, aided by AI and big data, we can now go further out so we can have earlier warnings of what happens. 10 days ahead, maybe even much longer. So that, I think, will help the shipping community as much as people on land, but we haven't focused on that sufficiently yet.
Thanks, Christine. Thank you so much. Harsh.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to participate in this very pertinent discussion. Shipping is indeed facing multitudinous challenges. All activities in this industry are under extreme scrutiny at all times. Almost everyone is a stakeholder in shipping, and the stakeholders are demanding more. We have customers who are requiring higher safety standards, higher accountability, and more efficiency. We have shareholders, financiers, lenders asking us about sustainability, DEI, and so on. We have inspectors, both official like Port State Control and others like RightShip, enforcing standards which are much above the minimum requirements of IMO and class. And above all, we have the crew. Our seafarers are getting more knowledgeable about their rights. They are asking for better working conditions, internet connectivity, for instance, better pay, better on-time pay. It's still surprising. There are ship owners who get away with not paying full salaries and paying salaries on time. All of this presents, in my opinion, a great opportunity for quality ship owners like ourselves. We are dealing with our customers. We've been audited by 3 customers in the last 2 years. We are members of Rio Tinto Designated Owners Program, All of this brings us closer to our customers and of course gives us access to cargoes going forward. Our sustainability report has received awards. We have excellent safety statistics. We have a diverse workforce, both ashore and at sea, and that gives us access to better capital or better terms for capital. Our crew, we are very fortunate that we have crew who have been with us for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. We act on the principle of 22 crew, 22 owners. Our crew actually takes stake, they believe they act as if they own the ship. And from our side, we give them the same amount of respect and compassion as we would if they owned the ship. So we treat them as equals, we listen to them, we care about them. And I believe that ship owners like us who are embracing this change, who believe in compassion, transparency, and ethics, we are going to succeed because of this new environment. Thank you.
Thanks, Harsh. Thanks for that. Ashish, let me take over from Harsh and come to you with regards to, he talked about the seafarers.
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, thanks to ICS and Nautical Institute for the invite. I think it's a pleasure to be here, and especially in Hong Kong, to see how vibrant the maritime community is, and especially this week. Yeah, so I would go across as Maersk, as ship owners, charterers, ship managers, and as crew. I think we have a global role to play, and where we need to ensure our customers, if it is the Samsung or the Nikes or the Amazons, are happy on the decarb journey. But on the other hand, we also need to see how do we keep our shareholders happy. And one thing I've noticed in the last at least couple of years more is that when people talk about decarb, in tandem, they talk about the crew also on board. And I think that's something really which makes me, as sort of crewing, quite pleased. But it also starts to put pressure on us that are we really going to be ready to have that competent people in the future? So we see now, for example, some of the Western European countries, seagoing career is not a preferred one. But then we have a lot of competent potential seafarers in South Asia or even some African countries. So there is a potential which is across and which needs to be tapped in over there. But does anyone want to go out to sea for 6 months when they can go to an office to 95? And in fact, after COVID, it makes it more difficult because you can work home 3 days in a week, right? And out at sea, you can't work at home. You need to be away. So I think important is that, yes, COVID brought about challenge. People say Red Sea was an issue. But for me, I think important is how do we communicate to our sea cadets or the future or the officers, the role they will play in the decarb journey. Shipping is way ahead. I don't hear much about the airlines industry focusing on that, but we hear a lot about shipping. So if you have those who have children 22, 23, I'm sure we are a bit reluctant to give them a car to drive out with their friends. Will they come back safe? You tell them 10 times, drive slowly. But when you go on a ship, you have a 23-year-old third officer or a fourth engineer responsible for, as Sanjay mentioned, $150 million ship, 25 lives, $500 million cargo. So this kind of a responsibility and the power they get when they go on board, they can't get it anywhere else. In the offices also, a 23-year-old is probably taking photocopies or doing small things, right? We have to be good at building the narrative that the contribution a seafarer has on the world economy or the global trade is quite intense. He's just not carrying a box from A to B. I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashish. And before I go to Pankaj, I would like to thank Mr. Wellington Koo, Neeraj, Vishal, and then also Aaron is there from Cullman, Novo, KC Maritime, Ship Phoenix. I think we got Vikas and Ravi there, and Pacific Basin, of course. All right. And Shell Ship, as I said, Vishal. So thank you very much. Without these sponsors, things like this are not possible. This ICS and Nautical Institute is no profit. It's education. These are the institutes, and we really are grateful for the support. Wellington, thank you. Thank you, Vishal. So now we go to Pankaj.
Well, maybe a reality check. All this talk about what Sanjay said makes seafaring a very scary career. The fact is, when I started at sea back in 1988 versus what seafaring is today, it is probably several times safer than it used to be. The fatality rates, etc., have dropped off a cliff. So I think we should give ourselves a pat on the back for what we have done over the years and not keep beating ourselves. This is one of the reasons people don't want to join sea, is because the maritime community does not have a good reputation and does not know how to represent itself well in the overall community. As far as decarb is concerned, again, uh, when you look back, let's say a handy-sized bulk carrier, I took delivery of a ship in 2016 and used to do 12 knots at 18 tons, was already a 30-40% improvement from the ships that were built in the 80s and 90s. Today, a 2024 Nomura build does 12 at 12 tons, which is another 30% improvement from what the ship did just 8 years ago. So we have been decarbonizing over the years, and that is not just true for handies, but it's true across the board. So the industry is doing more than what it is required to as far as the regulations are concerned, and is well ahead of the curve. If you just take the example of tankers, today the tanker order book is about $50 billion worth of investment. So while ship owners have made a lot of money over the last couple of years, they have also invested back in technology in new ships that will decarbonize further. There is no alternative fuel available right now from the industry, and I mean not shipping industry, but from the fuels industry that would decarbonize shipping. So how does a ship owner take a decision, which is a 25-year asset, to go out and say, I will do it basis ammonia or basis hydrogen or basis methanol and so on? Even then, ship owners have gone out and ordered ships. So this is an industry which is already ahead of the curve as far as decarb is concerned, and that needs to be acknowledged, because we just keep talking about the fact that we need to decarbonize, but that decarbonization target is for 2050. We don't know by that time what will be the alternative fuel that works. So if you invest today in a dual fuel ammonia-based vessel, you may be completely redundant in 10 years' time after taking delivery, because the new fuel, the new method may be that you are generating hydrogen on board the vessel as the vessel moves, and that fuels the vessel. So, it is a little early in the decarb journey to be taking these large decisions, but the industry is already doing it. And also, we are in an unprecedented geopolitical situation. We have two ongoing wars, one in Europe and one in the Middle East going on. Let's not forget where those are. And then we have Mr. Trump about to come into power in less than 2 months' time. That could completely change the trade environment as well. And it will have massive impact on the maritime community, be it containers, dry cargo, or tankers. On the energy side, generally it will be a positive, because he's very positive in terms of what he'll do on the drilling side, which is a more medium-term scenario, but he's going to be very strict on implementation of the Iranian sanctions, which is a very big positive for the crude markets. But if he decides to open up the Red Sea, for example, the container market will fall on its face. There is immense overcapacity in the container market, and to open up the Red Sea is easy. There is one vessel called the Bershad. There are a few Houthis who have very little resources. To get rid of this situation is easy. For what reason why the US has decided to keep that ongoing is for them to decide. But the fact is that the Red Sea could open with very little work from the US. So that changes the situation for containers very quickly. So on the geopolitical side, I think that we are entering a period where we will see a lot of volatility. In the last 2, 3, 4, well, since COVID, we have seen very good markets. First for containers, 5 years of a market that container market has never ever seen since inception. Dry bulk, which has seen immense returns in 21, 22, and 23. And then the tanker market, which for the last 3 years has been amazing. So we are entering now a period where I think we will see volatility on the downside.
Like as Paras had mentioned in his, let's have a round of applause for him. Like what Paras had mentioned, the chaos. The more the chaos, the better the shipping market. So the moment for whatever reason, I won't name the person, but whatever reason, if the chaos reduces and the Red Sea opens up, so that could be like have negative impact on the shipping industry. Just one question. We talk about percentage-wise, just 2.8 to 3% of the global emissions is because of shipping. In terms of millions of tons per year, panelists are not allowed to answer. Anyone, in terms of millions of tons of CO2 emission, how much would that be annual? ICS is also not allowed. This is different ICS, International Chamber of Shipping. Simon Bennett, thank you for coming. Yeah. Anyone, how many million tons of CO2 by shipping in the atmosphere every year? Or is it in billion? How much? 950, 980, 1 billion, about that. So that's quite a lot. As Sanjay said, like it's the sixth country if you look at by emissions by the countries, Germany. Now that's the example you gave. Now we come to one of the very, very important things. If that went away, what Neil is going to talk, what's going to happen to shipping industry is suddenly the sanctions are lifted. Then what happens? So let's listen from Neil.
Thank you very much for the introduction there, Jagmeet. Yes, I'm not going to answer that question specifically because we have a lot more discussion to discuss in terms of geopolitical risk, because what we would like to share is about geopolitical risk. You know, I've heard now from two people on the various other discussions that are taking, or seminars that are taking place during this week, and I think what Hong Kong is doing is fantastic because it's getting people in the shipping industry and maritime sector talking, which is great. Because by talking, we get to work out all the issues that we have. However, when it comes to geopolitical risk, this is something that's not within control of the shipping industry. What's required from the shipping industry is to mitigate that risk. And that's a kind of another discussion we'd like to have, but ultimately that's where we need to get to. The other presenters have said, and I agree with that sentiment, that sanctions are here to stay. They'll be here tomorrow. And in fact, looking at the track record of sanctions, ever since the United Nations was founded, they've only increased in complexity and scope. So that is something that we need to get a handle on, and something that we have to deal with in terms of how we do business, because I often get asked, now, who do sanctions apply to? Well, it actually applies to the entire maritime supply chain, because if you do business across the oceans with different countries, different ports, sanctions applies to you, it's going to affect you, because sanctions, when it applies to the maritime supply chain, affects where ships go, it affects what ships carry, it affects what companies are carrying goods, it affects even the crews of ships. You know, when I've been on board ships where the crews have been on board for months because the ship was seized and the owners can't find a way to get the ship released. So those are the kind of challenges and risks that you will face. Ports face the challenges of cargo moving through different ports. It's a fact that less than 2% of containers are searched. So the question is, what containers do you search so that you don't get caught up carrying sanctioned cargo, because the risks are big. Either your ship can be seized, or your ship can be refused entry to a port, or your company could have extensive reputational damage from being mentioned, being involved with sanctions, whether it's wittingly or unwittingly. So these are the risks that you're going to face. It's if you're put on a sanctions list yourself because of those particular activities. How do you get yourself off that list? Because I can tell you, getting yourself off that list is easier than repairing your reputational damage, because many companies are risk averse, and if your company has been mentioned in any in the same breath as sanctions evasion, the chances are people don't want to do business with you. So it's very, very important that you stay on top of this, and the way to stay on top of this is to have heightened vigilance, and you can only have heightened vigilance if you are aware of what sanctions are happening. And this is going to be your challenge. How do you stay abreast of new sanctions developments? We've seen now the EU is preparing the 15th sanctions package against Russia, because Russia is now the world champion of sanctions. It used to be Iran. You've seen now additional sanctions are being placed on North Korea because every time they fire a missile, they put additional sanctions on. There are other risks that you also face. For instance, if you do trade with Japan, if you've called into North Korea, it used to be the last 180 days. Now, if you've called into North Korea at all and you haven't declared it, you either be turned away from a port in Japan or you, like some ships captains have faced, they've been arrested. And we've seen this in Europe as well, where ships captains have been arrested because of sanctions. So the risks are increasing in scope. And the challenge for you is how do you keep abreast of the latest developments in sanctions and how do you deal with it in terms of your risk mitigation?
Yeah, I think these sanctions, I recall from the time when I was quite active in cargoes and fixing ships. And I think if you miss out one of the actors in the entire supply chain, whether it is the receiver or it's the agent, and then you get into this trouble. I think vigilance, due diligence, making sure you do the things properly is extremely important. So coming to Paras, so is it okay if I call you Paras? Okay, coming to Paras, I mean, you talked about chaos, and I also repeated it later on. I would still come back to that. Apart from the COVID and the Red Sea or Russia, Ukraine, and some of the other things, anything else comes in your mind that shipping has benefited from chaos?
Classic case is when the world stalled in the first wave of COVID, and the oil market gone into contango. And you've seen the tanker rates, which we have seen last in 2007. Now, actually, and one of the reasons why we came to this conclusion is that unlike previous cycle, it is they are most financially strong that the sector has ever been in history. So to that effect, now it seems like the chaos has become a norm than an exception, like the 4 chaos in the last 3 years after COVID. Now, if you are a ship owner and if you have to do a probability analysis, it's 20-year-old vessels, it's not costing me much, even for the sake of optionality. Let me hang on with this for 5 more years. All I need is a good 3 months. So what will come? I mean, as they say, it's a known unknown. All we know is that something somewhere goes wrong all the time. When, what, how is the difficult question. And to be honest, nobody knows. In one of the slides, we've highlighted like some of the things to keep in mind. First, for the container is the US East Coast, the dialogue between the port workers and the port owners. They have stick now, while the wage agreement has been through, they stick with the wordings on automation. Do the port do automation or semi-automation? So that's the one near-term thing that everybody's keeping an eye on. And then, of course, whether the world sees tariff or a different degree of tariff, that will be another one. There are a lot of small port strikes going on, whether it's in Canada, whether it's in Mexico. So, I mean, to be honest, it's very difficult to say, but all we know is known unknown. Something somewhere keeps going wrong all the time. And if you can stay into the game, shipping industry today are in a position that they can be in it to win it.
Yeah. So what I understand from you is that the problem is if the chaos reduces, that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's the cycle, right? So chaos reduces, freight rate plummets, they get to the level, and then we have plenty of older vessels that will go to the scrapyard.
All right.
And this will go deja vu again.
Yeah. So one thing I just wanted to bring here, like everyone remembers Q1 2016, Q1, Q2, when nobody knew when the market is going to go up. And if you go back to my college, my school, Cass Business School, which is now BASE, and Nikos Papapostolou's paper, and he's got that cycle. And that PMO, the maximum, the point of maximum opportunity is there, but then there is no finance. All right. So only the guys with deep pockets who have the money, they could invest that time. And pick up the cheapest of the ships. Now, coming to investors' perspective, Pankaj, how do you perceive the maritime risk? So I'm not going too much into detail. I leave it to you. How do you perceive it? Just give in addition to what you already spoke, uh, h- how does an investor evaluate? Does he think more chaos is going to happen, so I need to invest now, or how does that happen?
Well, so we have, let's say, investors in public shipping that Paras has been talking about. They're not value investors. As far as maritime is concerned, they're traders. So basically, they're trading the market based on news, based on short-term events. So they don't really care how good your operation is, how long you've been in the business. All they care about is, are you large? Do you have good volume? Will I be able to trade in and out of the position? Will you trade up on the news? So, the criteria for stock investors is very different to ship owners and ship investors. Ship owners are looking at risk in a different way. So in this area, many of the investors are more TC players. So they're looking at value preservation, long-term investments, low risk investments. Shipping is not low risk, but you know what I mean? The way of investing is more get fixed cash flow. There are other investors, like, for example, Greek investors, who are, let's say, more risk takers. So they basically buy assets and then they look at a more longer term view. So, for example, people have gone and ordered dual fuel VLCCs for $150 million. The break even on that is going to be north of $60,000 per day. There is no time charter available at $60,000 per day for a VL. So their view is that I'm in this business, I've been here long enough. There will be a cycle where I will make 70, 80, 90, $100,000 per day on this. Or maybe in the decarbonization journey, there will be a tax on older assets where the younger assets, which are dual fuel, will get better value. So it's pure speculative investment. And then, of course, in terms of dry bulk and LNG containers, the view is different. The LNG market, for example, a lot of people are now investing speculatively where they take berths because the berth availability is limited. So you take a berth which is purely on spec, but you know that there are enough cargoes or projects coming on stream that will be able to get long-term contracts. So there, the view of the market is different, that you will find a long-term contract eventually. Dry bulk is a naked risk, more or less. You buy a ship, you try and trade it on spot. You hope that you buy it at the low point of the cycle so that your break even is low and you can ride out the cycles. If you make the mistake of ordering at the high point of the cycle, as some people have done in this cycle, the risk is immense. Now, if you have bought a Cape at $70, $80 million, your break even is approaching $35,000, $36,000 per day. Capes have generally not averaged those kind of numbers for the long term. So then you are hoping, and it's not that you have analyzed the market and you expect that market will be there. You're hoping that there will be some time in the cycle that you will make money from it. So I think each investor has their own drivers. So state-owned investors, for example, are supporting state-owned companies. They have to renew their fleet, so they're taking a more portfolio approach. I have 50 VLCCs. I'm ordering 6 at the peak of the cycle. I ordered the rest at the low point, so it's okay. I can take the risk on those 6 vessels. So investors in our industry will always invest that they have the money. There is no lack of capital for any type of investors, small or big. There's no lack of debt capital or equity capital. So this is why this industry will always be in perennial oversupply. We will never be in a situation that we are short of supply. Even now, if you look at the markets the last couple of years, we're finally balanced. Now, certainly, we are in a point where suddenly markets are down and everybody is shocked. They're surprised. Oh, why is the MR earning $5,000 per day? Only 3 months ago, we were earning $40,000 per day. Well, we are in oversupply. We have 140 MRs coming in 2025. We'll be in further oversupply. There are parts of the fleet which are old, but scrapping decisions take a while. Owners need to be convinced that the markets are down and they're going to stay there for a long time, because their break even for a 20-year-old ship is $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 per day. So as long as the markets are above that, they will keep trading forever.
Yeah, that's what I think Paras also mentioned that. Would anybody like to add to what? Yes, please.
Can I just carry on from there and perhaps put an additional perspective? Because as you rightly said, despite the fact that these alternative fuels, we're not really sure whether one will come out on top. And we've got ammonia, methanol, hydrogen, and nuclear, all these things happening at the same time. But I think just at this stage, right? And we do want to give opportunities to first movers for trying something. And I think this is really important, particularly since Amy is here, right? And Amy and her colleagues around the world, right, who are running ports and policies. With decarbonization, what would be a good way forward, right? So I think, okay, people are investing and governments are looking at decarbonization, then go with the first movers. So what are some of the first movers wanting to do in Hong Kong? Let's just take our local examples. They want to try, and government wants to try, for example, a green corridor. So, and I'm picking on a green corridor because at HKUST, we're doing the kind of emissions research of ships and of emissions, fuels, and so on, and length of journeys, right? So that we can have some scientific view about if you're going to have a green corridor from somewhere to somewhere, what might be an optimal way of doing it? So that's number one. Number two is, however, if you're just going to do one, or one bunkering, for example, right? Let's just do a methanol bunkering in Hong Kong next year for fun. Well, you aren't going to be able to do more if there isn't some policy assistance, let's say, to actually not just give incentives to the people who are willing to do one bunkering, but to see if you can drive some policy change along that whole route. So what might you want to do, right? Apart from the fuel supply and the ships that are doing it, maybe you can go to the cargo owner, right? So we're now talking about some of these green corridors bringing iron ore, right? From Australia to China, from Australia to Southeast Asia. And if you were to say, look, this green route, how can we get the cargo owner themselves to also pitch in? So I guess what I'm really saying is the first movers, let's see if we can also get others, including governments involved, to make it something that could be regular rather than one-offs.
Yeah. So if I say a statement, let me just make a statement and then ask opinion from you all. Because I have seen in dry bulk, if I charge 5 cents more per ton, then my client is going to go to somebody else. That somebody else may have only one view of the market. If market is in my favor, I will perform. If it's not, I won't, right? But then you lose the business, that 5 cents. So is it really important that the governments must come in this to support the owners or the operators in terms of, like we have a lot of initiatives already are happening, but is it something which needs to be done more in terms of support, or we just leave it to highly fragmented? I'm just taking example of dry bulk, highly fragmented dry bulk industry, where you are left to compete for the cheapest freight rate and then expect that particular service provider to give you a quality or the compliant ship. Anyone would like to add?
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment and then I'll pass it on. I mean,
Yeah.
we usually say, right, the reason that everybody wants the best, but nobody wants to pay a penny more, because I look at transportation, we usually say that because cargo doesn't complain and cargo doesn't vote. People complain and people do vote. So Cathay may charge $50 more for the quality of service that they offer. Sadly, that's not the case with respect to cargo. And I think because it's a global sector, and that's where the role of IMO become very, very important. I think pretty much every ship owner, at least the large one, the listed ones, all has a well intention to actually take the hit in terms of the cost, as long as it's a level playing field. So that's why probably whether it's a carbon tax, whether it's some other measures, if it is left to the individual shipping companies, then sadly, the first mover advantage who wanted to do everything right, when we look back and say that, okay, probably I did right investments at the top of the cycle, nobody else has followed, and now I'm losing my business.
Yeah, if I may, well, there are initiatives like the Fuel EU Maritime, for instance, where the pooling kind of incentivizes people to use alternate fuels and gain by sharing the pool with other ships. So I think more such initiatives will definitely give benefit to the first movers.
Yeah. And like
Only-
everybody is competing, you are rather, I would say everyone is doing their own work, and it sort of duplicates different companies. They think it's quite secretive, or they want to hold it next to their chest and keep repeating the same thing. So how important is collaboration? If I ask Neil and Sanjay, how important is that industry need to collaborate? Yes.
Can I just make one point here? Stakeholders or industry collaboration, I think this is where, again, governments can play a role. And I think in Hong Kong, one of the initiatives, right, is international promotion, which means events. And I think I heard Amy say the word mega. So actually, what we don't need are mega events. I mean, we can have mega events, but not necessarily mega maritime events, but gatherings, of the right stakeholders at this stage, right? Because we're not yet really competing, to work out not just the technical part of bunkering or green corridors, but to have the commercial type of discussion so that a forward-looking government like Hong Kong can make, I think, new kind of policies somewhere along the way that will actually help the industry. And then everybody's going to compete when the new level playing field is there.
Yep. Anything from anyone? Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Christine. May I take some time to advertising my newly action plan? Just heard from the panelists, thanks for all your views, because from different perspectives give me reinforced that our thoughts in the action plan is in the right direction. As the most recent one is raised by, suggested by Christine, is as some kind of commercial type gathering. Yes, we have undertaken to provide a collaboration platform for all the relevant stakeholders. Within our office, we just Keating is as a matchmaking party, on regular basis to bring the supplier, because at this time for the alternative fuel market is quite a young one at a very early stage. They yet to have any market standardization. So we only see that is a direct sale from the supplier and to the end user. So in their absence, in the interim, their absence. So we have to facilitate this kind of deal. And how to make it? Government won't step in to make transaction in the middle and take some commission. No. We just providing some collaboration platform. Say, for example, if you have read our action plan, we have committed so many tasks to complete next year and the year after. So we see that just by announcing our action or tasks, we have plenty of venue or chances to organize this kind of gathering. In fact, I'm talking to my team to make the first one in the next quarter.
Right. Thank you.
So,
ma'am.
yeah.
Yeah. So we'll just have Sanjay to speak. After that, I'll open it to the audience. Yeah.
Sure,
So I wanted to give 15 minutes to the audience.
No, I just wanted to first acknowledge, I think Pankaj had already mentioned this, but I think it's important to note this. IMO has been decarbonizing since EDI 1 and SEMP 1, right? There's no doubt a lot of work has been done. But the data tells us that the gap between where we are today and where we want to be tomorrow is widening. And it's actually not as wide because of those efforts that has been taken over the last 14 years since 2008. The challenge for us in collaboration is we are always trying to look for that one fuel that will solve all our problems. The reality is it's going to be a multi-fuel future, right? We need to be prepared to have a mixed fleet running on different types of fuels based on the kind of trade routes we do and the port of calls. I think the collaboration between government and the shipping industry stems from one important aspect is the energy transition that is happening on land. Because it will take time for shipping to renew its fleet, get their new engines. We really looked at shipyard constraints. So the pace of change is going to be low for maritime because of these infrastructure limitations. And therefore, if maritime can leverage the energy transition that's happening on the land side, whether it is like Japan that is going full force on hydrogen and ammonia, then your shipping industry down there can think about how do I leverage the power generation transition so that I can use that molecule and siphon off that bit for the maritime sector and then allow it to grow in pace. I think that's where the collaboration needs to happen. The other thing is among the shipping industry, one thought is I think Zemba has already given us a pathway on this, is demand aggregation. Can ship owners and operators within, say, for Hong Kong, for example, come together and say, based on our analysis, I'm going to have X number of vessels in the future. There's going to be methanol, biofuels, ammonia, whatever the case may be. And then how do I work with the government to say, how do we prepare the infrastructure so that risk can be spread across a larger volume rather than one individual shipping company trying to absorb everything? So I think this is where partnership and collaboration actually can really make a sense rather than just coming together, but really have action plans that can help overcome infrastructure investment.
So let me ask to the audience,
Demand
Yeah,
aggregation.
yeah.
Particularly when 40% of the methanol is going to come from China.
Right. So just to the audience, let me just open it. So can someone help with the mic, please? Yeah. So first that gentleman there, then Simon. Yeah. Okay. But one question, quiz question. How many of you think that shipping is a reactive industry and not a proactive industry? Yeah. In terms of decarbonization, do you think shipping has been proactive or reactive? Proactive? How many people?
Yeah, I think
Not
proactive.
bad. Very proactive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, please.
Yeah, I just
Can you
have
please say
Yeah.
to whom you're directing the
Yeah,
question?
my question to Dr. Sanjay actually. I'm just wondering, you said like we should have kind of looking at the engines where we can use any kind of fuel. So my question is, are we actually investing something research and development where we can make an engine which can use any kind of fuel?
No, I think you misunderstood me. What I'm trying to say is we're not looking for an engine that can use multiple fuels. What I'm saying is we need to consider a multi-fuel future. So depending on your trade routes, if your ship is plying that trade route, then if biofuels is the most available fuel from that trade route, you consider using biofuels. If it's methanol, then methanol. I mean, your engines are going to be specific for a particular fuel. There may be research going on to look for an engine that can burn ammonia, methanol, and VLSFO. I'm not sure, but if that's going on, that'll be great. But I think in the interim, we're going to have to stick to specific engines for specific fuels. But I think the point being is we can't wait for a single fuel to be readily available around the world because we don't have time to decarbonize.
Yeah. Just very quickly, anyone who has a question without talking about fuels, without decarbonization, without IMO? Yeah.
Hello.
Can we have the mic, please, to Vishal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, sir, I'll come to you immediately.
So my question is to Parash. If you allow me to mention that Trump too, your slide, if I use the word a pessimistic outlook, I wanted your comment. I mean, he has spoken about tariffs, fine. He's also spoken about stopping the war on day one. So you're giving some credibility to what he says in terms of the tariffs? Because he's done that in the past. We're not sure. But if this war stops, as he says, maybe not day one, but very near future, don't you think it brings immense opportunities and an upside to the entire market?
That is anti-chaos.
No, I think I agree. I think the only gap is in the duration. So when we talk about unwinding of Red Sea or unwinding of Russia-Ukraine, the immediate impact is that you have a plethora of ships. And of course, all the reconstruction, let's say, activities that will go around the world. But then that will happen over a decade. Whereas your supply is available on day one, if not on the week one or a month one. And that's what we were alluding to. It's more about.
Give a boost to Black Sea.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
Straight
So,
away.
depending on which sector, right? So container is outrightly Red Sea, 7-8% of the capacity will come back. Now, in various shipping panels that what I heard from the speakers also is that at this point of time, there is a consensus that even if the Russia-Ukraine war and Europe may not necessarily import, or at least will not import with the same magnitude as it was into the past. So maybe some of the trade patterns are here to stay, slowly but for surely. So a lot of moving parts, particularly with respect to President Trump's slide. I mean, to be honest, in my view, global trade is here to stay. We are only talking about the pace of growth, but that's economic cycle. And secondly, with respect to upstream, either you have it or you don't have it. So I think whether US import from China or somewhere else, I think global trade is there. It's just a shifting of supply chain. And I think that creates opportunity for the logistic company and shipping companies.
Yeah. Aras, can we say that the CAGR in terms of growth and demand for many, many decades, it's around 2.5 to 3% within that?
On bulk, yeah.
On bulk.
Container was slightly higher.
On bulk, yeah. Okay. So
Sorry,
The-
if
I'll
I can
come
just
back.
add something,
Yeah.
Jagmeet. When it comes to sanctions, what you're likely to see going ahead is that in the second administration is you're going to get renewal of the maximum pressure campaigns. You're going to see the maximum pressure campaign on Iran. One of the reasons will be to put pressure on the Houthis to stop firing missiles and attacking ships in the Red Sea in order to open up the Suez Canal. And the other maximum pressure you're going to see is on North Korea and Russia, because now there's a nexus between these countries. Iran is being sanctioned, given extra sanctions now by the EU because they're supplying arms to Russia. So because of that nexus now between Iran and Russia, there's going to be an impact on the shipping affected by that. Like the EU has just sanctioned Irisl now, the Iranian shipping company.
Right.
Then on the other side here, closer to home here, is the nexus between North Korea and Russia, because North Korea is supplying Russia with weapons, and there's a barter trade going on in return for those weapons. And so you're going to see more pressure put on Russia, maybe even a coal ban on Russia too. Now we've seen that North Korea, their deception is that they pretend their coal comes from Russia. We've seen 3 ships alone this year that have been seized, 2 by Cambodia and 1 by South Korea, because it was North Korean coal. Now you're going to have to determine where did this coal come from, and there's your challenge now, monitoring the voyages of ships to see what is the origin. Did it come from a sanctioned jurisdiction? Did it come from, did the tanker come from Iran because of the increased sanctions on those particular jurisdictions?
So we don't have that much time. I would have asked Neil about shadow fleets and shutting off the AIS and all those stuff. I mean, it's such a wide topic. So we got time for 3 questions. So one is Simon, one is Nobusa, and one more. Anybody else who is there? Yourself. So these are the 3 questions for the day before we go and hit the bar. All right, Simon.
Thank you. I'm Simon Bennett from the other ICS, the International Chamber of Shipping. If you're not familiar with us, our membership is the world's ship owners associations, including the Hong Kong ship owners, and our primary task is representing the industry at IMO. Thank you very much for the really fascinating discussion. Just had a couple of comments that I hope complement rather than duplicate because I missed the beginnings because I can be in two places at once, but not three. With the support of the Hong Kong government earlier this week, we held a meeting with a summit with ministers and our members from the shipping industry. And what we identified with the current challenges, the number one is fragmentation. It's fragmentation of the regulatory framework because of unilateralism. And then also, that we didn't pick up on it too much, but sanctions. Sanctions is really contributing to fragmentation, and you'll be familiar with the number of ships leaving the international group of P&I clubs, and generally it's causing a fragmentation in the industry. Just a couple of quick comments. With the Houthi situation, we have the privilege to be working with NATO and the other military deployers. And I'm no expert, but I'm told the current assessment, unfortunately, is that the Houthis are probably going to continue their activity for quite a while yet. Now they've discovered this toy, they're going to continue doing it. And also remember, in fairness to the US, I mean, the Western powers with Saudi Arabia have been fighting a war with these people for, I forget, 5-6 years without success. So I think it's much more challenging than people might suggest. So I don't want to monopolize. My only other comment is sort of relates to decarbonisation, but it relates to everything. And that is, we have a growing problem, we find, of just the sheer complexity of the regulations. And with Amy sitting on the panel, and you're very, I think you're very honoured. You're very lucky, and you have a government that actually supports you and is interested in you, which is often not the case in many other jurisdictions. But nevertheless, governments sometimes can't help themselves when they have a chance to make something more complex. And it's fantastic what you've just launched in Hong Kong with your new green strategy. But just one gentle observation, I believe you're going to have rewards for CII ratings. Yes. And you'll be aware that in the IMO space, because they rushed the whole thing, it was all politicized. And in our humble opinion, the CII rating system is completely flawed. It's not fit for purpose, and everyone should be very cautious about attaching any values to these ratings until we've had the review. But I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yep. But that was to tell them to keep the mementos ready, not to. Okay. So next one. Thank you very much, Simon, for your comments for both, like on the decarbonization as well as what's happening in terms of the war situation there. Yes, Nobu-san.
Yeah, I'm just today invited for this global risk and future of shipping. So I was expected to hear more about the risk and future. I think there's accountability of the regulators. Let's go back to the 10 years ago. We have this scrubber issue. I think scrubber issues, everybody is talking that it's very, very bad decision. And this is one thing we should be able to decide. And I personally believe this scrubber may be related to COVID, which we don't know, but this is the one thing I would like to say. Secondly, this is the Nautical Institute. So we had all talked about the cruise. And now that with a lot of technologies, and we have now see a lot of risk to the seafarers. For example, we are now opening the holes in the ship bottoms called air lubrications, and nobody talk about it. But if there's a ground and accident, that ship is easy to be sunk or grounded, and the risk of the cruise. And we are not talking about this comparing with the decarbonization technologies, and the insurance company must be very aware of what will happen. Now we're talking about this the fuels. And all the opportunities and the diversity of the different crews, the fuels. This means that what kind of crews will be on board the ship in the future. So much the risks and so many things to land, and who is going to on board on which ships, whose responsibilities. So basically, keep it simple is the best, but we have to come with some simple solution. Now, going back to the wind, I'm also talking about this cruise. Now that we have a kite, we have the sails, because sail means the sail, right? So we have all the winds. but how can crews can watch the wind and waiting for the where it blows, and how they get the bonus from the owners that if he sail good, so that we have another issues and how we're going to solve all these problems. So basically, we are in chaos everywhere. Thank you.
Yeah, Nobusa, thank you. Just very quickly, I would take the opportunity to respond. One, of course, you're talking about training, and so that's what part of ICS. We got the Just Transition Task Force, where a lot of efforts are being made to train the trainers who will then further go ahead and train the crew, especially when they are even studying. Second thing, who is going to manage, who's going to see the wind? As early as 1986, I was there for a new building of Windstar in France, in Le Havre. It's all computer controlled, triangular Decron sails with liquid ballast balancing system. Crew doesn't have to do that. It's all very well done. It's not the old style. Yes, lady there. Yeah.
Hello.
Can you please
I-
introduce yourself and then?
Yes, yes. Hello. I'm Maggie from Novo Recruitment. I'm very happy that be part of this conversation. I'm so happy that our company is one of the sponsor of the. And I want to ask because now I'm doing recruitment, right? In this industrial now, so which kind of skills and roles are you guys looking for? Means because Miss Christine is just bring this up, the AIs, the digitality. And before I was doing marine automation. So this kind of things is all changed the industrial. So I was just want to ask is what's the talents of and what's the capability you guys are asking from the candidate for the guy who are asking for jobs? Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I can answer that. So I think if you take the seafarers, right, vessels are going to be technologically very advanced, and a lot, as you said, about sail, while it may be automated, but a lot of data analysis being done. The data point being generated by any vessel is immense, right? And I was heading performance, fuel efficiency. So it's just not being done ashore, but more needs to be done on board. So it's going to be who are tech savvy, who understand tech, who can adapt to new equipment, who are good in data analysis. While having said that, the basic seamanship would still be a requirement. They will still need to see how to, take the wind or take the waves over there. You can't get away. But it's going to be more who are more digitally tech savvy, data analysis, who are open to those kind of things. Yeah. Yeah.
If I may comment, we don't know really what will be the challenges as we go forward. I think it's more getting people with the right attitude who will want to learn and then developing them and investing in them so that they develop the skills that are required.
Yeah. So what I will do now is I'm going to invite the chairman of the Nautical Institute, Dr. Captain Kaushik Roy, for a vote of thanks. And after that, I know, Christine, you're in a hurry, you need to go. So we'll start with a little memento to you first so that, we don't delay you. So, Captain Roy.
Yeah, thank you, Jagmeet and all. First, on behalf of both the institutes, I would like to thank our generous sponsors, without whom we could not make this event successful. The second, I would thank our panelists and the moderator, without whom we could not attract so many attendees. The third one, all our attendees who made their time to attend this important event. We know there are a lot of events going on during this Maritime Week. Tonight also there are some events, but thank you all who made this event successful. And I personally like to thank our immediate past chairman of the both institute, Mr. Jagmeet Makkar from ICS Hong Kong and Captain Alok Sharma from NI Hong Kong, who actually initiated this idea of having the joint event and what will be the topics and other things. And not only that, our event organizers, the members of both the institutes who actually worked very hard behind the scenes, collecting the monies, organizing other things. So a big round of applause for them as well. And the hotel staff who has helped us by organizing, arranging things, foods, drinks, and our audiovisual technicians who have helped us. By the way, we are not doing it physical only here. It's broadcasted live. So there are a lot of attendees who couldn't join us here, but they have listened to you. But because of time restrictions, we couldn't reach to them for their questions. So thank you to those who are attending remotely. And finally, all those behind the scenes and maybe whom I forgot to mention here, thank you to all of them. Thank you very much. After this, there will be a small presentation ceremony and the photo sessions, and then we'll go straight to the buffet and drinks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Roy. And Amy, of course. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate. And your colleague, Kaman, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so shall we start with the memento first, Captain Roy? To Christine, she has to go. And thank you very much. And can I also request all the EXCO members of ICS and Nautical Institute to please come on this side so that we can have a group photo. I can see Rishi there, Bhomik. Yeah, okay. Then Captain Neil Watts, Alok, you can also join. And Sanjeev, please, together, you can do that. Yeah.
That's the picture. One, two, yeah, one more. Okay.
Yeah. So Captain Verma to Sanjay. And to Mr. Khanna. Pankaj, are you captain? Okay. Chief engineer, is it? Chief mate. Okay. Thank you so much. And Alok, can you present to Ashish? I'll give to Parash and to Madam. Yeah, and also to Harsh. Yeah, and I'm going to take the honor and
Mr. Jagmeet Makkar to Mr. Paresh Jain. Miss Ami Chan, please. Sanjeev, hello, please.
Okay, closer. One, two, one more.
very great. I request all the panelists to please come. We can have a quick group photo. So please don't go. All right. Paras, you're there. Come. Sanjay, Harsh? I think ma'am has gone. Christine? Yeah. And where are others? And all the EXCO members also, please join. Please join. Can I request all the EXCO members of ICS, HOMIC, all the EXCO members, ICS EXCO members come. We got our international vice chairman. Let's take a picture with him.